school shooting in South Florida.
17 people shot to death.
What can be done about school shootings? Some say kids will be safer if some teachers carry guns. President Trump said that.
We need to let people know, you come into our schools, you're going to be dead.
I don't mean to be Captain Obvious here, but when it comes to school shootings, that seems to be the actual fucking problem.
Trump was mocked for suggesting teachers have guns.
Adding more of the same problem to the problem has never solved the problem.
Arm a teacher is completely insane.
It's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea.
But Trump's critics probably don't even know that many teachers have brought guns to school for years.
First of all, you fucking snitch. And secondly, if people did know that, it would probably increase the number of homeschooled children, because who would want their teachers to be trained to shoot students? And if you say the teachers are trained to protect students, you would be right. They would be protecting students from other students.
In Texas, teachers carry in about 200 schools. This high school advertises that.
I can see that sign out on the highway. Boy, it's a great, man.
Parents we interviewed here like the policy.
It's a good idea.
I think we need it.
It makes me feel safer.
I love the King gun policy.
Wow. Let's see how that worked out for Texas. In real life, 25 days after you uploaded this video, one of the deadliest shootings in United States history took place in the state of Texas. 10 people lost their lives in the Santa Fe High School shooting, not even a full month after you uploaded this video. What's the chance that any of those people in your little infomercial have probably changed their tune on this topic?
Superintendent Ricky Stevens created it, saying if there's trouble, teachers want to go defend the kids.
We know our staff and our teachers are going to go. Do we want them to go with a pencil or go with a pistol?
Everybody's against it.
This Florida student says teachers carrying guns is a terrible idea.
You're asking a teacher to fight an assault rifle with a handgun. That seems like a pretty unfair fight to me.
The teachers have handguns against somebody with a big gun. That's not much.
It's not much, but it's better than nothing. If you go there with nothing, you have no chance of stopping anything.
So you found a teacher who was a gun nut. Wow. Is this the guy you were snitching on earlier in the video?
The police come. They see your teacher with a gun. How do you keep them from shooting her?
We train a lot with our local law enforcement. So that helps us because we want them to at least know we're there and at least recognize us. If they happen to get shot while they're stopping a tragedy, all of our guardians have said, you know, that's just the price of being a guardian.
His teachers saw how during the Florida school.
And now telling people who already work in one of the most underpaid, frustrating, and tedious careers that they could be shot dead or have to shoot dead one of their current or former students, all while trying not to shoot the students who aren't shooting back at them, but are likely to be running for their lives, which the gunman doesn't give a fuck about. Also, while trying not to get shot by the police officers or resource officers who would not only not be able to immediately tell if the student or the teacher is the aggressor and might shoot the wrong person or people. You know what? How about some common sense regulation? How about some metal detectors on all doors and all ports of entry? How about surveillance cameras that actually work or people who actually watch them? These assault rifles are not small weapons. They are fucking huge. So if you look on a camera and happen to notice a 17-year-old kid carrying a fucking assault rifle bigger than his arm, it's probably a decent idea to lock the doors and call the police. To anyone who said, well, he can break it down and bring it inside with his book bag, did you miss the part where I said metal detectors? But what the fuck is this stupid conversation altogether? Because why is this the point of attack? Why are we inviting the idea of a fucking shootout? This is stupid. This is stupid as hell. Most students who commit a mass shooting would not be deterred by the threat of being shot by a teacher because they end up committing suicide any fucking way.
His teachers saw how during the Florida school shooting, the security guard waited outside.
It made me mad.
It's a reason she's glad she can carry her gun at school.
You have to have a fighting chance if something should happen at our school.
We hid her identity because she and the school don't want a potential attacker to know which teachers are armed.
Are you carrying now?
Of course.
No, teachers should not be expected to get shot for students by students. This problem is a behavior problem. It's not really about the guns. If you add guns but don't address the behaviors, then you are making a recipe for disaster. Honestly, the cameras and the metal detectors are great safeguards, but not a solution, because the problem is in the minds of these kids. Find out what they share in common that likely causes them to make these choices. Adding more guns is a waste of time and taxpayer money. The inevitable teacher shootings are going to start happening. These young men seem to be generally having problems with the opposite sex. Many of them deal with constant rejection. Many of them feel ashamed of the way they compare to other people around them in different ways. Many of them have problems at home. Maybe they are being bullied at school, or more importantly at home. Many of them have behavioral issues in class. Maybe they are a bully. Maybe they are dealing with academic or personal failures, or illness or disease in their family or in themselves that has led to depression. There's a long list of real life reasons that kids come to these sort of actions. Now, there is this moronic ass argument that has persisted for years, and it's so irritating and so dumb to hear people say this. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That is ignorant for one reason. If the bad guy has picked up a gun at all, it's too late to stop him. Somebody's gonna die. It might be you, it might be him. But as long as there are bad guys in existence, they will do bad things. So you don't stop the bad guy with the gun. You stop the bad guy from going bad in the first place.
Many people say armed teachers create new dangers.
Teacher accidentally fired a gun in his classroom.
At this California school, a teacher mistakenly shot at the ceiling. One student was slightly hurt by falling debris. But that's the only incident we could find where a student was injured.
You see that? This is when they try to get slick. You see, the key phrase there is students got hurt. So while he's trying to downplay the fact that guns are going off inside of classrooms, the other fact is this is not the only time a teacher fired a gun inside of a school. And wouldn't you know it, just days before he posted this video, a teacher was caught firing his weapon through windows at a school after he barricaded himself inside of the classroom. In fact, people move the goalposts on what even counts as a school shooting. But when it comes to teachers being involved in school shootings, it is not uncommon. And I'm really tired of looking at dead children's stories on the internet, so I will leave that search up to you. Just know that teachers are definitely human beings who are capable of making terrible mistakes with weapons, and we don't need to wait on peer-reviewed studies to understand that point.
Took a rifle to his...
On the other hand, armed teachers have stopped school shootings.
16-year-old Luke Woodham has been arrested.
When this student killed two classmates, an assistant principal with a gun held the killer at gunpoint until police arrived.
Stossel the fossil strikes again. Oh man, did you really just go back 22 years to 1997 to bring up one example of a student being killed by a staff member after that student had already killed several people that day, including his own mother? Look at the article you used. How did you think you were going to pull that bullshit off? Look, man, that picture is not even a generated graphic. Somebody literally took a picture of a magazine. Does anybody remember what magazines are? It's like Instagram that you can hold, but it doesn't have any other apps, so you get bored with that shit and you put it down after 5 minutes. Even your picture of this dude looks way old. All right, so enough of this 90s crap. It's Back to the Future.
We don't know how often armed teachers deter shootings. The media can't cover crimes that never happened.
We do know that school shooters are likely to be suicidal, and we can deduce from that fact that arming teachers would be pointless as a deterrent to suicidal shooters. For example, again, to point out the frequency, just 7 days after Stossel posted this video, a teenager committed suicide in his high school bathroom. A teenager committed suicide in his school bathroom. And according to information found on his cell phone, he wanted to carry out a mass shooting. So we can factually say that it doesn't really matter how many guns a teacher brings to school. The guns are not the solution to violence carried out by people who don't fear the consequences for their actions.
We don't know how often armed teachers deter shootings. The media can't cover crimes that never happened.
First of all, the media does cover crimes that haven't happened. The FBI has the arrest record to prove it. You absolutely do hear about thwarted attacks and people being arrested for conspiracy to commit acts of violence and domestic terrorism, plans being foiled by active tips and other measures. So again, even in those cases, the solution was communication. When you see something, say something. At the very least, you are saving one life, and that's the life of the shooter. Because trends show the biggest danger to these young men is themselves. How about some outlets for these young men to vent their frustrations without everybody being on their case all the time? How about some classes that teach young men how to approach and interact with young women, or teaching young women how to interact with young men? I can guarantee you none of these mass shooters had women fawning over them. Otherwise, they would have been too busy to shoot up a school. A lot of what happens inside of high schools is great for brain food, but you can't actually apply some of it in the real world. So we need to focus on more skills that these kids can actually apply in the real world, like being able to apologize, like being able to communicate, and also having critical thinking skills. So why don't we all try to help these kids get laid or get fit or improve their testing scores? Why don't we try to help these kids have normal friends and healthy relationships? Human emotions don't take kindly to suppression or condemnation, but they react beautifully to stimulants. So teaching people to deal with life in a more functional and positive way lowers the outcome of creating a bad guy to begin with. And we don't have these social skills being built into our curriculums.
The media also distort what President Trump proposed.
Donald Trump said teachers should have guns. Teachers should not be required to protect and serve and to teach.
Required? No teacher's required to carry. It's voluntary. Those who want to bring their guns to school can.
You opted to normalize gun violence in school by adding guns and waiting for another attack to occur so you can say, "I told you so," which is a stupid gamble, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned it yet in this video that your ideas are stupid. And what happens to the kid that doesn't want to be in the classroom with an armed teacher? Are they required to keep taking that class? Are parents then required to feel comfortable with guns in their children's classrooms? Are the teachers required to keep the gun on them at all times? And what happens if a student gets a hold of the teacher's gun? Are the teachers then required to get clapped? I don't get it. Or maybe it's John Stossel that doesn't get it. And now arming people who already work in one of the most underpaid, frustrating, and tedious careers by comparison is the solution? Do you even know what a fucking teacher does? Do you have any idea what teachers have to put up with?
Here's another distortion.
I really do not support the idea of arming teachers.
Arming teachers. Arming teachers. A new federal program? That's not what the president proposed. Lots of teachers already have guns. All a school has to do is allow some to bring their guns to school.
No, that's not even remotely correct or responsible, you silly jackass. Just allowing teachers to bring guns to school is not how it works. They need proper training, which will cost them tens of millions of dollars. Even if a minimal amount of teachers opt into it, that same money those teachers would much prefer to be used towards a raise. Then you have to buy accessories for the guns, state-issued lockers and holsters and a variety of gun cleaning accessories. And inevitably, somebody is going to misuse those funds to order some extra free guns for themselves. So you're basically adding a defense contract for schools to the budget.
At the Keene School District, however, Superintendent Stevens did create a new government program.
The school purchases a gun, and then we give them and register them to our teachers.
That way, he says, he can make sure all teachers have training on the same type of gun. It's good that America has 50 states. That allows experiments.
Wait, this ain't no experiment, bitch. The lives of children are at stake, so fuck you for saying it like that. You need to communicate what it is you're trying to say better, because these people are not lab mice. And so far, all you have done with your argument is try to create a path to more death and destruction by bringing the tools that aid the problem in manifestation instead of creating a path to blocking or preventing the manifestation of the behaviors that lead to school shooting. So I want you to know, Tom Selleck and Burt Reynolds are ashamed of you, John Stossel. You are doing an injustice to everyone who still has 1984 Caterpillar mustaches.
Finally, as we ponder the best way to keep students safe, we should address the scariest myth.
The epidemic of shootings. The epidemic of school shootings.
Despite what the media say, there is no epidemic of school shootings. No sharp increase. School shootings kill far fewer kids than driving, suicide, drowning, even suffocating.
Let's add up all the children that have been killed between 2000 and 2015 and then do a whataboutism that actually debunks the ignorant argument you're trying to make. You see this number over here, suicide? Yeah, turns out that category is closely related to school shootings, as, I repeat, a great deal of school shooters commit suicide. A great deal of mass shooters commit suicide. But even more important is the Werther effect, or copycat suicides. When a suicidal act is popularized and publicized, what you may see is other people carrying out or attempting to carry out the same type of act, which is another reason that news outlets need to stop posting the amount of deaths like it's a fucking scorecard, and stop announcing the name of the shooter, because you'll see those websites, because you will see website forums where the guys' names are being honored. What the news should cover is the names and the stories of the victims instead, because if copycats see that they won't get the supposed glory of being remembered as some big horrible monster, and that only the victims get remembered, they might be less likely to carry out the Werther effect. When it comes to the perps, they should be given code names like hurricanes, or give them names like the suspect has been given the name Toadstool to prevent any popularization of the act he committed, or call him like some random alphanumeric code like suspect ZQ781, or call him Bertha for fuck's sake. But we don't need to look at some lowlife in the media being promoted every other day on the news to all of the country while his victim names go completely forgotten. This is just common damn sense, folks. We need to hear the stories of these murdered children instead, to remind us to take care of the children that are here right now, especially the ones who are thinking about carrying out another mass shooting.
Finally, as we ponder the best way to keep students safe, we should address the scariest myth.
The epidemic of school shootings.
Despite what the media say, there is no epidemic of school shootings. No sharp increase. School shootings kill far fewer kids than driving, suicide, drowning, even suffocating.
The school shooting epidemic argument is a goalpost argument, with people stretching and twisting what the word school shooting even means in order to make their point. Some people say a shooting on school property is a school shooting. Some people say it has to be a student shooting other students or faculty to be a school shooting. Some people hijack the term so that it connotates with mass shootings, meaning 4 or more people got killed, as the FBI definition states. And all of this argument is useless. Who cares if it fits your definition of an epidemic? This is a problem that needs to be addressed and solved. And we can't address a problem if you are too busy fighting over what to name it. For every shooting that takes place on or near a school zone, there are reports and public records. Look them up and make up your own mind on whether or not you feel like it's epidemic. But nobody gets to say that it's not a problem. Case closed on that. There is not an increase in the frequency of shootings at schools. There is a massive increase in suicides over the past 30 years. One of the biggest jumps at the start of the mobile social media age was teenage white females around 14 years old, jumped up by 320%. These are behavior problems that can be solved with communication. And if they can't be solved, then at least they will be addressed if we open up the conversation and move the conversation forward and stop focusing on the apparatus or the tools that are used in the problems and actually focus on what creates the problem itself.
Why now? School shootings are not in a big uptick.
Exactly right. But we prepare for them, because if even one shooting happens, it's more than we would want.
Your reasoning is that of a child.
You're 10 times as likely to die suffocating.
Right.
I mean, you can't protect against all these things.
No, but we do train our kids in school how to not suffocate and how not to drown.
No, there is no class that teaches you how not to suffocate. What the fuck are you talking about? I guess you were talking about CPR, but no school teaches you how to do CPR on yourself, because that's not possible. CPR stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation, meaning artificial ventilations are involved, and you can't do that yourself. And maybe it's because I went to a black school that we innately figured out how not to drown, that nobody ever put that shit in our curriculums. But maybe they should. A class on how not to drown at a black school is going to raise GPA averages, because all these niggas finna get an A in that class with no question. We figured out how not to drown when we took sink baths as a baby.
Certainly, Stephen's armed teacher program is cheaper than what my town does. New York City spends hundreds of millions of dollars stationing police officers in and around schools. Of course, here and in most blue states, suggesting that some teachers carry weapons horrifies people.
They don't understand that a responsible, trained teacher with a firearm is better than having a teacher with nothing.
Why don't we try to get these kids out of the crazy ass situations that they may be living in at home? Or whatever the case may be, we have endless resources to utilize, but we will never get to those solutions if we don't move the conversation forward and start repeating these same weak ass talking points.
Texas will definitely probably be leading the way when it comes to protecting our kids with weapons, and that New York would choose to go a radically different way.
I'm glad that we live in a country where the local people can decide what goes on in their school district and not a bunch of people in New York City.
I try not to insult the Huckabee families because people have been shitting on Southerners for the longest time, calling them dumb. All right. I'm just going to stress to this guy that the only thing people in rural areas get from places like New York City is subsidies, which is something to keep in mind when you are bashing the liberals, because it's the liberal states like California and New York with massive economic hubs that are propping up certain aspects of your life, buddy. So just keep that in mind if you don't mind, sir. But I'm glad you are at least involved in the conversation where you live to protect the kids where you live.
Teachers in New York City may fear guns, but teachers in Texas can serve and protect.
Meet John Stossel the Fossil. He is the personification of old news. Now here's a quick origin story of this guy. Tom Selleck and Burt Reynolds conceived a love child together in the back of an old broken down news van in 1640. 9 months later in 1657, the trunk opened and this greasy motherfucker plopped right out. And ever since then, the world has had to deal with John Stossel.